Breaking the negative loop. Start by remembering the power within you. There are days when you wake up feeling heavy for no apparent reason. Everything seems normal on the outside, but inside, there's a quiet conversation filled with doubt, judgment, and anxiety. Thoughts keep looping in your mind. I'm not good enough. Everything will go wrong just like last time. I know I'm going to fail. And then you stop moving forward. Not because someone blocked your way, but because your own mind has trapped itself in an invisible box. What's most frightening is not the adversity itself, but when you believe you're powerless against these negative thoughts. That belief creates a spiral. The more you buy into those thoughts, the smaller you feel. The smaller you feel, the more you get pulled into inner chaos. It's no longer just a fleeting emotion, it becomes a habit, a habitual chain of reactions that keeps you living in fear, anxiety, and constant unease. But the truth is, you are not a victim of what goes on in your mind. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Stoic philosophy doesn't teach you to avoid negative thoughts. It teaches you how not to let them control your life. When you become aware that thoughts are simply thoughts, not truth, not your identity, you begin to escape that mental trap. You cannot stop your mind from producing negative thoughts, but you can choose not to believe them. That is the starting point of inner freedom. It is when you face anxiety without running away and without letting it define who you are. It is when you feel yourself slipping into a negative state, but pause to ask, is this really true? Or is this just an old mental habit returning? Each time you pause to observe your mind, you reclaim your authority. From that moment on, you are no longer just a being tossed around by circumstances. You become the one who decides how to respond. The journey of mastering your emotions, overcoming stress and anxiety, doesn't begin with a dramatic breakthrough. It begins with something simple, remembering that you have the power to choose which thoughts stay in your mind and which do not. That is where it starts. And it is also the door that opens toward true resilience. A new perspective. When you can't change the event, change how you respond to it. There are things in life you cannot control. A harsh comment from someone, an unexpected situation, or a loss you never asked for. Moments like these often make you feel helpless, as if the whole world is against you. But Stoic philosophy doesn't encourage you to change the world. It only asks you one thing: how are you choosing to see it? Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." That line is simple, but it holds a deep truth. Your emotions don't come from the event, they come from the story you tell yourself about the event. When you're rejected, you can think, "I'm not good enough," or you can think, "This is a chance to build resilience." When someone criticizes you, you can choose to be hurt, or you can choose to learn. The situation doesn't change, but your perspective creates two entirely different worlds. This is why inner freedom doesn't begin by controlling the external. It begins by mastering your internal interpretations. When you react unconsciously, you lose your freedom of choice. But when you pause, observe, and respond deliberately, you are doing something powerful, reclaiming control over yourself. Changing your perspective isn't about sugarcoating reality. It's the courage to look the problem straight in the eye without letting it consume you. It's when you're standing in a storm, yet still say, "I can't stop the rain, but I can learn to walk through it without letting it soak my heart." Every time you shift your perspective, you don't just change your feelings, you change the way you live in this world. And the beautiful truth is, you can do this at any moment. Start today. Start with just one frustrating situation and ask, is there another way to look at this? One that helps me grow instead of shrink? You can't control everything, but you can always control your response. And that's where true strength begins. Unhealed wounds, the real root of negative thinking. Have you ever wondered, why does your mind often return to the worst-case scenarios, even when nothing threatening is happening right now? Why, when faced with an opportunity, is your first thought about potential failure? Why does a gentle piece of feedback feel like a deep wound? The answer lies in the root. Negative thoughts don't arise from the present. They are echoes from past experiences, wounds that have not yet healed, memories you thought you had forgotten, but that still quietly live beneath your consciousness. Every time you're criticized, your mind reopens files of past failures. Every time you face a risk, old injuries whisper, "Be careful, don't let yourself get hurt again." A negative mind is not your enemy. It is merely trying to protect you. But the way it protects you by making you doubt yourself, avoid challenges, and shrink away also traps you in a false comfort zone. You think you're avoiding pain, but in truth, you're limiting your life. Marcus Aurelius said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." If you think negatively for too long, you don't just believe those thoughts, you start to define yourself by them. And that's why you feel heavy, tired, and lost. But you can change. And that change begins by identifying where those thoughts come from. Every time a negative emotion arises, instead of resisting it, observe it. Ask yourself, where is this thought coming from? Is it even true? Or is it just the echo of a time I was once rejected? You can't heal what you refuse to face. But when you dare to shine the light of awareness on those old wounds, they begin to dissolve. Not because you force them to disappear, but because they no longer control you. And then, little by little, you will realize you are no longer the child you once were. You are no longer in those past circumstances. And old thoughts no longer have the right to define you. From that moment, you begin to live, not through reflex, but through conscious choice. Not in defense, but in growth. Not to avoid pain, but to step into the light with a healthy heart and a free mind. Resetting your mental operating system. Replacing old thoughts with beliefs that make you stronger. There are beliefs so deeply rooted in you that you no longer realize you're carrying them. They operate like a default system in your mind, silently running, silently limiting. Every time you try something new, a voice appears in your head. "I'm not good enough. I always fail. No one cares about me." You don't need anyone to say those things anymore because you've believed them long enough to repeat them to yourself. These are no longer just fleeting thoughts. They're old scripts you've played out unconsciously for years. And the danger is this: your mind starts functioning based on those scripts as if they were objective truth. That's why you react the same way over and over. That's why you shrink back when facing challenges. That's why anxiety grips you even before anything happens. Marcus Aurelius once emphasized, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." If your mind is filled with negative statements, it doesn't matter how beautiful the world outside is, you'll still only see darkness. But here's the good news. Your mind can be updated just like an outdated operating system can be replaced with a stronger version. And this renewal doesn't come from forcing yourself to think positive. It begins with awareness, catching yourself in the act of repeating a limiting belief and choosing to replace it with a healthier one. For example, instead of "I can't do this," say, "I can't do it yet, but I'm learning and I'm moving forward." This is not lying to yourself. It's choosing an empowering belief instead of a weakening one. Start small. When you make a mistake, instead of blaming yourself, "I always mess things up," try saying, "I'm improving each day. Mistakes are part of the process." Each time you choose different words, you're rewriting the mental code that runs your life. It may feel awkward at first, but just like learning a new skill, repetition turns today's choice into tomorrow's habit. Refreshing your mind isn't just a personal practice. It's a declaration. I no longer let the past write my future. I no longer accept limiting thoughts as truth. I'm rebuilding from within with patience, awareness, and trust in my own power to heal. Because inner freedom doesn't begin when the world changes. It begins the moment you change the way you talk to yourself, what you live with every day. Is it nourishing or draining your mind? Your mind does not operate in a vacuum. It is shaped, nourished, or harmed by what you expose it to every day. The conversations you take part in, the people around you, the space you live in, the content you read, listen to, and watch. All of these are food for your mind. The question is, what are you feeding it? You might spend hours cultivating a positive mindset, but if you're surrounded daily by criticism, judgment, negativity, and endless complaints, your mind will still become tired, doubtful, and unstable. Not because you're weak, but because no one can remain strong in an environment that constantly pulls them down. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts, but the quality of your thoughts cannot be separated from the environment you live in." A mind trying to heal cannot grow in a place filled with noise, pressure, and negativity, just as a seed cannot sprout in dry soil without light or water. Take a closer look. Do the people closest to you uplift you or leave you drained? Does the room you're sitting in give you peace and focus, or is it cluttered with chaos and procrastination? Even your phone, does it serve as a tool for learning? Or is it a speaker constantly blasting anxiety, envy, and meaningless distractions? You don't have to eliminate everything, but you do need to choose consciously. Your mind is sacred ground. Don't let it be overtaken by things that don't deserve space there. Spend time with those who remind you of your worth. Create a living space that brings calm and intention. Set boundaries around what your mind absorbs, because every piece of content you consume sends a message into your subconscious. Changing your environment isn't always easy, but you can start with one small shift. A book instead of hours of scrolling. A quiet corner to breathe instead of letting noise flood your senses. One notification turned off. One negative conversation politely declined. These small choices, repeated over time, will reshape your mind in ways you never imagined. And then you'll realize you don't always need to fight the negativity in your head. Sometimes you just need to stop feeding it and create space for healing instead. That's not escape. It's a sacred act of protecting your inner peace. Just act. Don't let your mind trap you in endless anxiety and overthinking. Have you ever been in this state? Sitting for hours, thinking, planning, imagining every possible scenario, and yet, in the end, doing nothing. The more you think, the more anxious you become. The more anxious you are, the more you delay. And a small task turns into a mountain of pressure, simply because you let your mind take the wheel without letting action interrupt the loop. Your mind is brilliant at imagining. It can convince you that the worst-case scenario is inevitable. It can build fears that have never existed. And if you sit still and listen long enough, you'll start to believe that you're not capable, not lucky, not strong enough to do anything. Marcus Aurelius was not the kind of man who waited for inspiration. He wrote, "Don't waste time debating what a good man should be one." That is Stoicism. Not endless talk, not obsessive analysis, but action. Because action is the most powerful antidote to anxiety. When you act, you cut through negative thinking. You bring yourself back to the present. You send your mind a signal. I'm not paralyzed, I'm doing something, I'm moving forward. And the miracle is this: the smaller the action, the more lasting the power. One step taken, one email sent, one page written, one phone call made. Each is a way of telling your mind, be quiet now, I'm living, not just thinking. Don't wait until you stop feeling afraid to begin. don't wait to feel ready. You act not because you're fearless, but because you refuse to be ruled by fear. Remember, every time you delay, the anxious mind wins a little. But every time you act even in the smallest way, you reclaim a piece of your power. And when you repeat that every day, small, steady, intentional actions, you are building a new nervous system, a new habit, a new self. No inner freedom has ever been built by thinking alone. It is created through action by those who dare to stand up in fear and do the right thing, even with shaky hands, even with a mind full of doubt. And sometimes, all you need is the first move. The next steps will follow. Every word is a seed. What you say is shaping who you become. Have you ever noticed this? The words you speak, whether aloud or silently in your head, quietly shape how you feel and how you live. A phrase like, "I never get it right," might sound harmless at first, but if you say it every day and believe it every time, it will take root inside you, as if it were the truth. Your mind doesn't clearly distinguish between a joke and a deeply held belief. It simply records what is repeated and turns it into your identity. If you constantly say things like, "I'm weak," "I'm bad at socializing," "I ruin everything," then you are programming yourself into someone who fails before they even begin. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The things you think about determine the quality of your mind." But this doesn't apply only to your thoughts, it applies to your words too. Because words are thoughts spoken aloud, and when you say something too many times, you start to live by it. You might not believe yet in the power of words, but think back. How many times has a negative remark, whether from yourself or someone else, dragged you down for hours or even days? And on the other hand, how many times has one encouraging word lifted you back up in just a few moments? That is the power of language. It can be medicine, or it can be poison. So, what seeds are you planting in your mind every day? Take a moment to observe how you talk to yourself. Are you encouraging yourself or punishing yourself? Are you building inner strength or slowly dismantling your self-belief? You don't need to force yourself into fake positivity. Just begin by changing how you phrase things. Instead of, "I can't do it," try, "I'm learning how to do it." Instead of, "I always fail," try, "This is a lesson I'll do better next time." This shift doesn't just change how you see yourself. It opens up a healthier inner space. A space where you're allowed to make mistakes without self-hatred. Where pain doesn't make you feel worthless. Where you begin to speak to yourself like a friend, not an enemy. And remember, the words you use with others reflect your own inner world. When you practice speaking with kindness, honesty, and mindfulness toward others, you are expanding the space of healing within yourself. Words are seeds. What you sow, you reap. Sow fear, and you'll live in anxiety. Sow belief, and you'll grow in strength. You don't need to change everything in a day. Just start with one different sentence today to yourself, and your inner world will slowly transform. In chaos, you need roots like a tree. This is emotional resilience. Life will never stop testing you. There will always be something unexpected, an outburst from someone, a sudden loss, a failure you tried so hard to avoid. You can't control the wind out there, but you can become the tree whose roots run deep into the earth, unshaken by the storm. That's the essence of emotional resilience, not the absence of pain or wounds, but the ability to rise again with clarity after falling. It's the capacity to navigate emotions without being swept away by them. It's the calm center in the middle of chaos. It's that voice in your head that says, "Slow down, don't react yet observe." Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Emotional resilience begins with that realization. Emotions are something you can observe. not something you must be ruled by. When someone offends you, your first instinct might be to retaliate, to get angry, to protect your ego. But if you pause for a moment, take a deep breath, and ask, does this reaction reflect the person I want to become? Then you've already reclaimed control over your emotions. Resilience doesn't mean being numb. It's not about suppressing feeling. On the contrary, resilient people feel deeply, but they don't let emotions blindly lead. They may feel hurt, but still choose kindness. They may feel disappointment, but still stay committed to what matters. They don't avoid emotion, they observe it, understand it, and move through it. One way to build resilience is to ask yourself during hardship, what is within my control right now? The answer may be simple: to breathe, to stay calm, to take one small step forward, or to remain silent instead of reacting. Those small actions, repeated consistently, create an unshakable inner foundation. Just as a tree cannot stop the wind, you cannot stop the world from knocking you down, but you can become the tree with deep roots, not broken by the wind, but grown stronger because of it. And every time you survive a storm without losing yourself, you become a little more invincible. That is resilience. That is inner freedom, and the seed of it already lives in you. Your job is simply to start watering it every day. When gratitude speaks, fear falls silent. There is something strange about the human mind. We easily remember what hurt us, but quickly forget what once uplifted us. When you live in a rush, surrounded by pressure and expectations, your mind naturally focuses on what's missing, what's lacking, what went wrong. And the more you stare into the gaps, the more anxious, unsettled, and drained you feel. But you can reverse this lens, not by tricking yourself into believing everything is fine, but by reminding yourself to notice what is still present, no matter how small, and recognizing that life is still quietly offering you more than you realize. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Don't dream about what you don't have. Be grateful for what you do have and imagine how much you'd long for it if it were gone." That reminder is not just a philosophy, it's a mental strategy for navigating fear and negativity. When you practice gratitude genuinely, with full awareness, you are rewiring your perception. Instead of focusing on what worries you, you guide your mind back to what strengthens you. You remind yourself, today may not be perfect, but I still have breath. I still have choices. I still have people who care. And I still have the power to begin again. And that's enough to move forward. Think of a day when you felt lost or discouraged. If in that moment, you paused and wrote down 3 small things you were grateful for: a warm cup of tea, the morning light, the eyes of a loved one, how would you feel? Maybe not joyful right away, but your heart would soften. And that softening is the soil in which hope can grow. Gratitude doesn't make hardship disappear, but it keeps you from drowning in it. It's the small light in a dark room, not enough to erase all shadows, but enough to help you find the door. When fear fills your mind, pause and ask, is there anything I can still be grateful for right now? The answer doesn't need to be grand. It just needs to be honest. And that small truth will remind you, you haven't lost everything. You still have something worth standing up for. Gratitude is a choice, a practice, a spiritual act of someone building strength and inner freedom, not through force, but through gentle nourishment from within. And when gratitude speaks, the noise of anxiety begins to fade. Not because you ignored reality, but because you chose to face it with an open heart, strong enough to carry on, live with purpose. Because when you know why you keep going, adversity no longer scares you. One of the deepest reasons people fall into anxiety, confusion, and a loss of direction is because they live without knowing why. Each day passes as a list of tasks to complete, responsibilities to bear, and people to please. You wake up, run through your schedule, then collapse into bed with a feeling of emptiness. Not because you're weak, but because you've forgotten what gives your life meaning. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "A person may toil hard all their life, but if they have no goal to direct every thought and action, they are simply wasting their life." There's nothing wrong with being busy or working hard, but if you don't know what you're living for, then everything you do, even your greatest achievements, will lack inner connection. And when the storms hit, it's easy to be swept away. On the other hand, when you have a clear purpose, you become unexpectedly resilient because you know why you're enduring, why you're pushing through, why you won't give up. Purpose is like a lighthouse in the night. It doesn't calm the waves, but it helps you stay on course in the ocean of life. Your purpose doesn't have to be grand, nor does it need to look like anyone else's. It might be the desire to become a good father, to live with integrity, aligned with your values, to write something that heals others. Anything that makes your life feel meaningful can become the steady root of your resilience. And when you live with purpose, you start filtering out what no longer fits: toxic relationships, excess expectations, paths that pull you away from yourself. You stop living to please everyone. You start living to stay honest with the one thing that matters most: your soul. If you're feeling lost right now, pause. Ask a very simple question. What truly matters to me? You don't need a perfect answer, just an honest one. And let that question guide you. Bit by bit, you'll walk closer toward a life with direction, with roots. Then hardship won't scare you anymore, because you'll know everything that's happening is just a part of the journey toward where you need to be. Not every day will be easy, but every day will be meaningful when you live with a clear why in your heart. That is the foundation of inner stability, and it is the path toward the deepest kind of inner freedom. Observe before you react. This is how you reclaim emotional power. Have you ever said or done something in a moment of impulse and immediately wished you had paused for just a few seconds? We're not usually hurt by what happens. We're hurt by how we react to it. Too quickly, too harshly, too unconsciously. And what remains, more often than not, is regret. Stoicism doesn't teach you to suppress your emotions. It teaches you to observe before reacting, because that pause is where your emotional power lives. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "So many things we get angry about would seem insignificant tomorrow." That line is a reminder. Our fleeting emotions are not the truth, and we don't have to act on them. When you're insulted, your mind wants revenge. When you're disappointed, you want to collapse. When you feel dismissed, your ego urges you to prove something right away. But what would happen if you didn't react immediately? If you just breathed, observed the emotion, and let it pass like a wave, that is not weakness. That is strength. Because the one who can observe their emotions without being carried away by them is someone training themselves in self-leadership. And the person who leads themselves cannot be manipulated by anyone. Picture yourself in an argument. There are two paths. One is reacting to win. The other is stepping back to remain calm. When you choose the second, you're not only managing the conversation, you're managing your own heart and nervous system. You are training a skill, the pause. And that brief moment is where real inner strength is formed. Practice this in everyday life. When you feel irritated, don't speak immediately. Ask yourself, what am I really feeling? Could I respond differently? What matters more, being right or staying grounded? Your answer may change each time, but the very act of asking means you're no longer reacting blindly. Each time you observe instead of reacting, you're practicing freedom. Not the freedom to do whatever you want, but the freedom not to be ruled by anything. And that is the peak of emotional maturity. Self-mastery doesn't mean you never get angry or hurt. It means you know when to pause, when to stay silent, and when to let go. Because you understand, peace in your heart is worth more than any victory on your lips. And you, through each moment of inner observation, are becoming invulnerable. Practice daily mindfulness. When you're present, anxiety cannot enter. Are you truly living or just existing? How many moments in your day are you actually present in your life? Not thinking about the past, not worrying about the future, but simply here, with this breath, this emotion, this task. Most of the time, our minds are not where our bodies are. At work, we think about yesterday's mistakes. While eating, we think about unanswered emails. While talking to loved ones, we're caught up in plans for tomorrow. And so, we live an entire life without fully living. That's why anxiety, stress, and exhaustion cling to you. Because you're constantly being pulled away from the present, the only place where you can actually make change, feel grounded, and live deeply. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Do not let the future disturb you. You will face it, if necessary, with the same reason that arms you today." This isn't just comforting advice. It's the key to entering inner freedom. By practicing mindfulness in each moment. Mindfulness is not some mystical state. It's simply the act of returning to now with full attention. It's when you wash your hands and feel the water, when you speak and truly listen, when you feel sad and sit with it without distraction or escape. And when you become mindful, something magical happens. Small things gain new depth, vague anxieties dissolve, and life, with all its beauty and fragility, becomes more vivid and precious. Daily mindfulness also helps you step out of automatic reactions. Instead of being dragged by emotion, you create a space. And in that space, you get to choose to react or to let go, to be patient or to lash out, to stay present or be scattered. You don't have to meditate for hours to start. Just a few mindful seconds before checking your phone, before replying to a message, before reacting to a harsh word. Those tiny moments, repeated, will rewire how you live and experience the world. Imagine a day where you're not tugged by past regrets or future worries. A day where you are fully here in each action, each emotion, each gaze. That's not just a peaceful day. That's a conscious life. And mindfulness isn't about escaping the world. It's about truly being in it, with clarity, gentleness, and freedom. Right here, right now. This is where it begins.